and welcome to Hospice Insights, the Law and Beyond, where we connect you to what matters in the ever-changing world of hospice and palliative care. A command performance. RAC audits on the rise. Quirky name to our title, but Performant is the name of the contractor, right, Brian?
Yeah, Performant is the recovery audit contractor who's recently been sending out requests to hospices all over the country. So a command Performant is one way to think of it.
That sounds like our when we came up with our yes. Excellent, efficient, extraordinary, whatever. What was our
innovative EEEI, the hospice?
Yeah, our hospice cry. That really motivated people on the hospice team. You rah rah.
Yeah, people love the team still loves it when we bring that out during meetings.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Performant is the contractor and so we're seeing RAC audits, and these are post-payment review. And I think most of the things we're seeing is focused on continuous home care.
And GIP. Yeah, you could tell you'll get a multi-page letter. 99% is boilerplate. We've seen a lot of these letters, but ultimately, they'll have a part of the letter that has a heading or a title that will tell you whether it's GIP or continuous home care. And of course, when they identify the patient and the claim that they want records for, you'll be able to tell for yourself from your own records, is this really continuous home care and GIP? And the good news has been lately that these are focused on one, maybe two patients and just one claim per patient, which is not too surprising given the elevated levels of care. I think would be unusual to have somebody on GIP across several claims. So they're somewhat limited in their scope, which is a nice change of pace in the audit world from the CPI and UPIC and OIG audits that we're dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when people are getting these letters, as you said, it's usually asking for one patient. They might get another letter down the road for another patient, but it's never like a 10 patient pull or something like that, which is helpful. But I think that anytime you talk about auditors, everyone's question is, well, they get paid, on a commission basis, right? They are a contingency basis, like they get a portion of what they recoup. And I think most of the time that's not a one-for-one like that. But RACs, recovery audit contractors, are ones that are paid on a contingency. Now, due to litigation around how RACs performed audits for hospitals, how they're paid that and how many records they can pull and stuff, there's been some adjustments made to that. But these are the contractors that you could argue have an incentive to deny claims. However, I think the experience that we've had working with clients on these is that there's a discussion session that you can use, which has been very helpful to people, and they have actually made changes and turned things that were denials or a haircut on, like some people have gotten haircuts on their units for continuous care because they might have overlooked some documentation about units, and they've, reversed that. And so I think of all of the news there is to share about audits, I think these have been refreshingly small, but also that they listen and that you might not have to go through the whole appeal process because you do have this ability to have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, and that is such a benefit, not just to providers, but I think to Medicare, to have these discussion sessions. These discussion sessions come up in a few contexts, and we always want to take advantage of them, like true smirk appeals, what we call true smirks. There's a discussion and education session before they issue their final findings. And we've gone into those. And when you talk through the issues with a representative, sometimes, they will listen and they will realize they made a mistake and correct it in their final findings. Same with Performant, where you can actually talk through things. I think it was C2C, one of the quicks, that had a pilot telephone discussion project a few years ago, where we actually talked with someone at the reviewer and were able to, before we had to invest more in appeals and go to the ALJ, we're able to kind of talk through and reach some more reasonable conclusions, or have the auditors reach some more reasonable conclusions. So, I think that's a solution that should be available in UPIC audits and in all kinds of audits, because it is helpful. And for these Performant reviews, they're specific in the letter. You'll see in the letter they do reference this discussion session where there's an opportunity to discuss and an opportunity to submit more documents. So absolutely take advantage of that. And for that reason, we don't advocate or recommend that clients submit anything more than just the records requested at the initial stage. See what the results are, and then use that discussion session to do some more advocacy, submit more documents to try to defend your position.
Well, I guess my one beef with these audits is that essentially GIP and continuous care are so underutilized generally. And so then you're going to audit the people who are actually providing all 4 levels of care. Because, I think that's sort of the challenge with all of these audits, right? Is like the CPI audits that are focused on really long length of stay. It's like, well, we're just going to pick your tail, and unless you discharge everyone that's been on service over 6 months, you're going to obviously have a tail. And same with this, like if you're really doing all levels of care, of course, you're going to provide continuous care and GIP. And so again, I just think some of these audits really have chilling effects, and the way some people could respond by how you stay underneath the radar screen is, I never provide all 4 levels of care. I, discharge people if they, outlive a 6-month prognosis, even though they might be eligible. Now, you'd hope that would flag from a data analytics standpoint their high live discharge rate, right? If you're going to try to game the system that way. But still, I just think it's part of this larger audit trend is just, I think you're pounding people who are actually providing the benefit and not trying to necessarily game the system here, because continuous care is really a hard level of care to provide. And I think people should be encouraged to do that and staff for that. Especially with all of the staffing shortages people are having right now. To have a team devoted that can be on call to do this is, I think, a really wonderful thing. And so I do think in general, these audits have resulted in, not as many denials as everything else we've been talking about in the audit land. And that, as you said, Brian, that opportunity to discuss has been really critically helpful to hopefully, not having further review and payment denials and whatnot.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast was it just seems that these are becoming more prevalent. I've had, many calls just in the past month about hospices getting the Performant letter, which is more than I've seen in all the years I've been doing this. So, look in the mail for these things. They seem to be increasing in prevalence. Thankfully, they're not as hardcore as other audits that are out there, but you still got to take them seriously. With continuous home care GIP, the dollars add up, and we know hospices need to fight for every dollar they can get.
Absolutely. So, all right, Brian, audit, Mr. Audit, Mr. Robot. What is it, Mr. Robotic? What was that from the 80s?
Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, Mr. Roboto. So I'll call you Mr. Audit.
Domo arigato.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, we're dating ourselves. But
Yes.
anyway, our listeners are probably our age anyway, so they'll
Sure.
get it. But that's why I'm going to call you Mr. Acho.
Yes. Audito. We'll workshop that. We'll hammer that out.
Exactly.
Next podcast, we'll have it done.
Yeah. So, well, thanks as always, Brian.
Yep. Thank you, Meg.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Hospice Insights, The Law and Beyond. Thank you for joining the conversation. To subscribe to our podcast, visit our website at hushblackwell.com or sign up wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, may the wind be at your back.